There's certain states I will not touch. I have 5 states on my list and 4 states, 1 province that I won't touch. I won't go to California, Colorado, New York, Connecticut, DC. Not gonna do it. I don't like their property ownership laws. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore. I'm here with my main man, Dave Spulich, for our Whiskey Wednesday segment. These are our short, sweet, to-the-point episodes where we're going to dive into a couple of questions that are about our world, what's going on. Dave always puts me on the spot on a few things, so we'll dive into that. And then we're going to make sure that we go through some trending topics that are going on in the short-term rental world and talk about kind of some details about what's going on in our world. And then obviously, which kind of rolls into what's going on in the short-term rental world, some questions you guys send in. And so if you have those questions, DM us on whatever platform you're watching or listening on, or shoot us over an email at support@vodyssey.com, and we'll make sure that we add those questions to an upcoming episode. So Dave, what's on the agenda today, Mr. Producer?
I have a couple questions for you.
All right, let's roll.
So the first one, you can't say Alex Hormozi because you said him last week.
Okay, on my podcast. Yeah, so it's another influencer type. So like, who do I want to?
If you could spend 10 minutes with anybody, Ooh. Could be past, could be way back, it could be anybody.
Dead? They could be dead?
Could be dead, yep. Oh. Who would you choose? You got 10 minutes, just sit in a room, have a glass of whiskey, hang out, talk to
Okay, I'm going to give you a dead and alive because my dead one's kind of cliche a little bit, I feel like, but it's who I would choose, Jesus. If I'm spending time with 10 minutes with anybody, dead or alive, it's Jesus.
I'm going to give you 2 as well because that would for sure be, no question.
So
I'm most everybody.
I feel like that might be a little easy, right?
All right.
The second, alive, I'm sitting down with Michael Jordan. So I want to sit across Jordan and just have a conversation, right? There's just something about being in the presence of greatness and the best ever. And I mean, I've just been a huge fan of his forever, not only from what he's done on the basketball court, but just, I mean, there's just something different about guys like that. Yeah. And I would love to just sit across from him and have a conversation.
Such a competitor.
Oh, man.
Gone through so many things, experiences. And I mean, can you imagine the stories that he could tell? And you know what I mean?
And just that, like they've said, I've heard people, like you hear about, like, he's like the all-star's all-star, right? You hear about some of the best in the world and the way they talk about him and being in the presence of him. And so I would love to just, you just kind of feel that energy. Just a guy that you're just like, man, like just dialed in, right? Just a killer.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So, how about you?
I did absolutely think about Michael Jordan because I think he's the greatest ever, and there is some appeal for sure about his competitiveness. And if I could sit down with anybody, and I thought this is a little, I didn't really dial it in too specific, but for me, I would spend 10 minutes with almost any U.S. president. I just think that is the most. The toughest job, just what they go through, their experiences, being the leader of the free world, being the most important person in the world at times. I don't know. I think obviously George Washington or, I think Trump went through so many crazy things that might be interesting to sit down with him. I mean, but I would like to talk to most any president and spend 10 minutes with them and just say, all right, talk to me. Tell me about how it was, like the goods, the bads, the pressure situations, all this stuff. I think that'd be interesting to chat.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say almost any, because I totally agree with you. Yeah. I don't care,
me neither. The
political affiliation. Yes, I think that sitting down with the president of the United States, any of them, would be a complete honor to be able to dive into what they go through, how they make their decisions, all those different things that they're, and they're all so different. I mean,
I know that's the thing.
I think you'd learn something from everybody. And even the ones you just completely disagree with.
Like, exactly. Right? I mean, even if you didn't maybe care for them, I'd still love to sit down with them. And I'd be like, wow, I still admire any president of the United States who's taken that on and respect them for that position. No question.
Right. And having a chance to see and hear their side of the story, because there's always two sides to everything, right? Sometimes we sit back in the armchair and say, what in the hell? And I promise you, I say that a lot right now.
Exactly.
A lot. And, But and I don't know where I heard this before, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. It's like, it's really hard to hate close up. It's easy from far back to really can't stand somebody, right? Or their actions or what they're doing. But the point of it is, like, when you get to know people, you're like, I see why they think that. I see why they're doing that. Not that you're going to necessarily agree with them at the end,
Right.
but you don't hate them for their viewpoint, right? Where sometimes the further back you are, you're like, man, I can't stand that, right?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting when I've thought of that, especially as I've gotten older. It's hard to hate close up.
Yeah.
Is when you actually have a chance to sit down with somebody, and even somebody you disagree with completely, hopefully you both walk away learning something, and maybe not changing each other's mind by any stretch.
Yeah. But like, man, he's not that bad of a guy.
Yeah.
Right?
A good person.
Yeah.
Maybe don't agree with everything he's doing, but probably most people I think are good to their, at the core, they're good people.
All right. Second question. If you could have a private concert with anybody, like they came to your backyard, you could invite some friends over, private concert, who would you invite?
For me. George Strait.
Oh,
I'd have the king.
Gosh.
I'd have the king in the backyard.
I did the same for me.
Really?
Absolutely, George Strait. My favorite song in the whole world is Amarillo by Morning. I think it's the greatest song ever. I would put George Strait. So if anybody knows George Strait out there and can, he's coming to Utah and come to the Vodyssey event, that'd be great.
We'll put him in the Vodyssey event in the backyard.
All right, who would be number two?
Man,
I'm going to say mine first, so you don't say yours. I would say mine would be Alan Jackson.
Okay, all right. Well, those are kind of the same type of.
I know.
I'm trying to think of somebody a little different.
Maybe new.
I'm going to go with, who I think would be really fun? Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
Having him in the backyard party. Jelly Roll, totally different party than George Strait's party.
Yes.
Totally different, right?
Yeah.
But first of all, I've seen George Strait live a couple times and love it, right? He's my guy, my style. Like that was an easy first one for me. The second one would be a little harder for me. I mean, but I would say Jelly Roll, Chris Stapleton would be right there. Guys that are just unbelievable live.
Right.
Would be fun to be able to have like that private concert, right? And so,
you know,
there's other guys that you like their music, but they need the whole the whole band and they need everything going on. Some of these guys, like I'm thinking of the guys that really just could stand up to a mic and you're like, man, their voice is just unreal.
Yeah. That's awesome. Good. All right. Well, let's jump into a short-term rental topic, kind of something that's going on right now. And some of the questions that we've gotten online kind of lead to this, but building a brand in the short-term rental market is just as important as building a brand in a business world or a sports team or anything like that. So the question is, when do you build that brand? Do you build it from day one when you're starting it out, or do you get things going and then build your brand as things evolve and kind of get, and there may not be a right answer, maybe there is, but I think a lot of people have asked, like they want to build a brand, they want to have a name, they want to put things in their short-term rental that are building the brand, stickers, cup holders, whatever, placemats, signage, things like that. And so what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So one, I could get real long-winded on this. So cut me
let's
off.
Keep it, let's keep it, let's just bullet point
Here's why I could get long-winded. One, there's everybody says, hey, I want to build this brand. I need a logo. I want stickers. I want my name on everything. And I want to have all this stuff. That's not what a brand is. Your brand is a reputation. The experience and that we deliver and everything that we do to service that customer, that's our reputation.
Yeah.
We have a logo or a brand or a name so that they remember, that they can tie that experience to. And so I think there's a huge mistake of everybody thinking, I need this brand and I want this and that and the other. And they're like, I just want a cool logo and a name and people are going to remember it. That's bullshit. They're not going to remember anything unless you deliver an amazing experience. Your reputation is your brand. We tie a logo or something that was try to be congruent to the experience we're delivering. And that's trying to give them something to remember, but they've got to have an emotional or a feeling tied to that brand, right? To that logo. I feel like it doesn't, and to be honest, it doesn't matter what your logo is, right? It doesn't matter really what any of that is. If the experience and the emotion was so great, they just need something to tie to, right? And so so I think that a lot of people overspend time, and I think it's the easiest thing to do because they feel like they're working. Businesses do this all the time. It's not just short-term rental. Businesses will spend, entrepreneurs are like, I need to get my logo right. I need to, do this. I need to do that with my name and my logo, and I got to build that brand. Well, you build your brand with your reputation, is my opinion. And so the same is true in the short-term rental game. So worry about your reputation. Worry about and you build that reputation with the customer experience, right? That's what we sell. That's why people come back to us. The only reason you want to build a brand is so that you get repeat customers and referral customers, right? Why else would you build a brand, right? There's so to have a cool logo, no, it doesn't get you any better or more front-end business. Sometimes it can look more professional, but to be honest, in our game, people are a little bit more repelled about the big professional corporations, and they're more drawn to the personal aspect of a vacation home. Hey, I want to stay in Dave and Kelly's vacation home because they look like they have an awesome time and they've done a great job setting it up. Not I want XYZ brand corporation on the front end. And I think that that's a misconception as well. And so having all that on the front end is it doesn't matter, right? What it is we want to build it, in my opinion, for the reputation we build, so that when I go back to Dave and Kelly's property, I'm like, hey, I got to find Dave and Kelly's property again, and I can't find it on Airbnb. I can't remember what it's called. So if you have a name or something I can tie to it, it's easier for me to find you again, right? And so it's the association of that with the experience you deliver. Is it important? Absolutely. Is it important the way that most people think? Absolutely not. And so I don't know. I'm trying to not get super long-winded on that, but it's to me the distinction is you build your brand with your reputation and what you deliver, customer experience, because you want referrals, you want repeat customers, you want people to say, hey, I want to go back there. And we need to associate that with something, right? And that could be Dave and Kelly's cabin, right? Whatever it is, right? It could be whatever. You just have to have something they tie it back to.
Well, and I think it's you hit it right on the head. It's the experience and it's the emotion and the feelings you get after you're gone from there. Because when you look back and you say, man, I want to go back to that place. Remember how fun that was? Which you may not necessarily remember the name, but that's why it would be important, like you said, to, it's the Stargazer, and I remember it was the Stargazer, so you could look it up. They're going to book it again because of the experience, and that's the brand that you're trying to create.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the brand, right? And if it can be congruent, which it should be, congruent design, congruent the whole experience put together, and a lot of that is that very professional and where they're from start to finish, it's been a really professional, high-end experience for that guest. It all ties together, right? But that's the brand. It's not a fancy logo or a cool name or getting the name right. Like I have people are in our mastermind group all the time. Like yesterday on my coaching call, somebody's like, "Hey, what do you think about the name?" And I'm like, "The name is great. The name, frankly, doesn't matter that much, right?" The only reason I would name a property is, again, to give some recognition to that experience that you're delivering. Sometimes that name, like I have the Lakeside Treehouse, it's very descriptive of what that experience is going to be, right? It's a property on stilts in the canopy of the trees right on a lake, right? So I could have called it something else, but I just used a fairly descriptive name. But at the end of the day, the name doesn't matter if you don't have a great experience. There is one thing that can make or break your success with short-term rentals, and that's your ability to provide your guests with an amazing night's rest. We're taking all of the guesswork out of selecting the perfect mattress system. Personally, I have these custom mattresses in every one of my short-term rentals. We love them so much that we even got them in our own personal homes here in Utah. So visit VodysseysleepSystem.com and use the promo code PODCAST. It's all caps at checkout to get 55% off.
The two questions we get within our Vodyssey group are pretty simple, and they're complex, but they're always mostly the same questions that come every time for somebody that's a new member or somebody that is considering getting in the short-term game. And so, and I think we could go off on a big long tangent, but I want to talk about the two questions and just maybe dive into them for a second. So the first one is everybody asks, where should I invest? Right? I mean, that's a no-brainer. Like you could have, I could have asked you and you could have probably said that. The second is, how do I underwrite that property? So I think those are the two major and probably most important questions that people ask. One, if they're getting into the short-term rental, or if they've now joined Vodyssey on our onboarding calls and things like that. Those are the two things. We could go way down the road on that, but let's talk maybe 2 minutes on each. Okay, where should I invest is the first one.
I always tell people because you've got to narrow it down, right? I've got to narrow down locations. If you're, you got worldwide at this stage. We have people investing everywhere. Outside of the U.S., in the U.S., everywhere, right? And so you have to say, there's somehow we have to narrow this down. Even if I narrowed it down by the numbers, it's going to be too overwhelming. And so understand that. There's not perfect markets. There's not perfect properties. Every property, every market has pros and cons. And so I always tell people, start, where would you like to own a vacation home? And then inevitably, the investor buyer is going to tell me, well, I don't care because I'm not going to use it. And I say, Trust me on when I tell you this, because there's reasons why I want you to buy in areas you're interested in down the line to create that experience, to do the marketing correctly. If you know nothing about the area and you're not interested in it, you're going to fall flat. So just tell me where. Maybe you never use it. Maybe you're going to use it 10 years from now. Where the hell would you want to own a vacation home, right? And so we narrow down 3 to 5 markets there. Then we start to look at the investability of that market. The very first thing we look at is, can I actually operate a short-term rental here? There's a lot of markets that are highly regulated, and they don't have very good property ownership laws, right? There's certain states I will not touch. I have 5 states on my list, and 4 states, 1 province that I won't touch. I won't go to California, Colorado, New York, Connecticut, DC. Not going to do it. I don't like their property ownership laws. People go there, people visit there. I get it. There's profit drivers there, but I don't like the rules and regulations there. And that has nothing to do with where you can operate a short-term rental or not. I don't like the property ownership laws. Then you got to look at, can I actually operate a short-term rental? This is a mainstream asset class at this stage, and most municipalities have said, yes, I like them, or no, I don't, or here's how you have to operate if you do want to operate one. So you have to understand that. So now what we're doing on those 3 to 5 markets that we narrowed it down to, we're trying to say, can I operate? Are the rules, the regulations, the laws in my favor that I'm comfortable with? And that's probably going to discount 1 or 2 of them. You might kick a few of them out, but let's say it didn't. Then I'm going to look at the average acquisition cost and the ratio between the average acquisition cost and the revenue that I can generate in that market. And I need to have a favorable ratio in order for me to make any money, for it to be investable. And so again, I'm taking steps by narrowing down my markets. Once I find that, then I dive deep into figuring out how to underwrite these properties. And again, the underwriting consists of identifying the revenue range for the property type you're going to be buying, whether it's a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom, a 5-bedroom, a 1-bedroom, whatever it is, right? I'm not running the whole market. I'm going to run individual numbers on each of those segments of the market. You might find when you do that. So I might have narrowed it down to 2 markets, and I start to say, hey, I really wanted a 3-bedroom, and I find in one of these markets that the 1 or 2 bedrooms is a way better opportunity than the 3-bedroom because of the acquisition cost and then the revenue I can make on it. I might make a different decision, right? And so I'm gonna start to narrow it down now on more detailed underwriting. Right. And then when I get very specific houses, I'm looking at, okay, I've run the market revenue range. I understand the average nightly rate range in that market from top to bottom. I understand how much money is being spent in that market. Now I've got to take this specific property, plug the exact numbers. How much am I putting down? Are there any fix-ups? Are there any repairs I need to make? What is my furnishing package going to look like? What is my artwork package going to look like? All these different costs that are going to add up on that specific property, right? How much am I going to be spending on all that? What's my total capital outlay? What is my debt service going to look like? How much am I going to be paying there? What is my my fixed expenses, my variable expenses? And everybody has all these fancy calculators as if they're rocket science. They're not. Everybody basically is looking at those 4 things, right? Fixed expenses, variable expenses, debt service, money in. Right? It's not complicated. And then ultimately the revenue you're going to make on the property. And then you calculate your returns. The underwriting though is where people miss on it is they stay way too general instead of getting very specific. You have to start fairly general, right? Give me your 5 properties you want to own a vacation home in. And then we start from there. And almost always, then we're able to deduct and find the right properties, right? And so if we don't, we start over. Okay, where's some other areas you like to visit?
Take some patience too.
It's just a process that most people haven't ever gone through. Like we just feel like it's second nature, right? Like I always tell people, I'm more comfortable on a weekend going buying a house than I am a pair of jeans sometimes. We just that's what we look at. That's what we know. That's what we're used to looking at. But it's not for a lot of people, right? Most people have only bought their primary residence. Well, you don't go through any of that on your primary residence. You look at the neighborhood you want to own in, the schools you want to go to, your price point, the area you want to live. That's it. You don't look at the investability. You don't look at all those other things, right? We start at the level that people are kind of used to, but a lot of the investor clients that are saying, I just am looking at it for an investment, they struggle with that start, right? They're like, I want something else. And so we put out our top 10 markets every single quarter. All we do is go pick 10 markets that we feel like have good regulations, good property ownership, like laws in that area. We look at just different price tiers, right? We're like, okay, what are 3 to 4 good markets in the the $300,000 range? What are 3 or 4 good markets in the $500,000 range? What are 3 or 4 good markets above $750,000, right? And we just and it's mostly just to get people thinking, like, these markets look good, and we show them the market revenue range and all that stuff. And so that goes to the point, like, and we don't talk about this very much on the podcast, but if you are listening to the podcast, we have a ton of free resources. We do quarterly top market reports that we send out. We have the pros and cons of vacation home investing. We have our Grizzly method to how to get your unfair share of business in the markets out there, right? We've got all of these different tools, the 5 mistakes that owners make and how to revitalize struggling properties, how we audit properties, all those different things. So go follow us on our social platforms, and it's Vodyssey, Shawn Moore, and follow that stuff. We talk about our meetups. We talk about the works, like we're doing a workshop where I've got a summer series workshop that we got one tonight, right? And we do one once a month pretty much. And the one tonight is how to revitalize a struggling property, how to audit that property, how to figure out what you need to do to create a better experience. How can you articulate it better so that you can start to raise to the top 20% of that market? But go follow us on those social platforms. We announce all those things, and they're absolutely free. Tons of resources on there. And so, and one of our resources is our Data Sense University, right? And which is underwriting, choosing right areas, all that kind of stuff. And those resources are absolutely free for you. So make sure that you go follow that stuff to look for that, because we put a lot of this stuff out there so that people, like we always say, my goal is to have people walk into this game with their eyes wide open. There's a lot of people out there talking about how to underwrite, how to do all this stuff, how to pick your top markets, because they are the number one questions, but there's a lot of misleading information out there, right? And you don't want to get into a situation where you buy the wrong property in the wrong area, right? And your expectations were wrong. And so there's, we try to provide a ton of stuff. And so you walk into that with your eyes wide open.
Well, and I think I really want to emphasize again, just taking advantage of those resources. Right. Our STR Data Sense on school, jump on there. It's a big community. There's tons of resources. There's tons of information we give. We give the free worksheets there. So you can jump on and have all the worksheets that we use to underwrite our own properties. And I also think don't be, when you were talking through kind of how to underwrite stuff, some of that stuff, because it's so second nature to you, it's just easy and it. You can just talk about it in a second. I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. There is a process. And if you use a proven process, which Vodyssey has, it is simple. It's not easy, but it's a very simple process that you can follow. So I think that was great. So that's what we got for today, buddy.
That's it. All right.
Good job.
That's good. Let's wrap it up. So guys, we're going to wrap this episode up. As always, we appreciate your time. We know how valuable it is, and we appreciate you spending it with us. And so we can have these conversations. If you know somebody else that would like to have and be a part of these conversations, share the show. Those things really do help us spread the message, help other people walk into the game with their eyes wide open. If you're having any problems finding all these free resources, DM us. Or if you have questions, make sure you DM us on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. We'll make sure that we get them in your hands and you're off to the races with, again, that stuff doesn't cost you anything. If you have more than 30 seconds, we'd love you to like, share, review the show. Those things make a big, big difference for us on spreading the message. And then finally, the most important thing I always ask you at the end of every episode is to go pick that one thing you can do today, start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends. Cheers, brother.
Cheers, buddy.